Okay, so I switched up our internet early last year. We were having problems with Comcast. There first I had purchased a modem which got fried. So instead of purchasing another to replace it, I just subscribed to their modems to where I pay a monthly fee to have their modem in our house. Well, their modems kept frying themselves after just a couple weeks. So I think we went through about 5 or 6 modems before I canceled the service because I was on AT&T before with a really slow service, and then Comcast for just a little while, and then AT&T ran their fiber in our neighborhood. So I was like, okay, they finally here, so I have their service now, and it's really reliable. So, but I couldn't run the modem or put the modem where I wanted. I like it's central, like in our upstairs hallway, and I could only they wouldn't run the fiber into the house that far. They was like we could go through an outside wall, but that's it. Like okay, so we have the modem in our bedroom. So right now I have a Wi-Fi link from the modem to a little Raspberry Pi sitting in that central location, and then a cable running from that Raspberry Pi to my router, and then from my router it goes to everywhere else. Well, for the longest time I just had Ubuntu Linux running on that router, and I just used IP tables to route everything where it needed to go. I had Pi-hole on there for just DNS, and it works great because then I can filter out a lot of the DNS requests and stop all the tracking and just advertising that just kind of jam up what you're doing. So I liked it for that, but I couldn't use my voice over IP network on with that router because the Linux kernel, at least the kernel modules, don't allow full cone NAT. And what that means is, like, if the incoming service from outside the internet connects to your router on a specific port, it doesn't translate to the same port on the inside. And so it just for I don't know why it doesn't work. That's kind of ridiculous. So I installed pfSense, and pfSense works on the same computer that I had my other Ubuntu Linux router running on, and I'm just starting to get it set up. So I have it. You can kind of come in here, and you can see I'm using Cloudflare's DNS servers right now. They're actually pretty quick and halfway decent. I can see my upload to the Raspberry Pi. This is my WAN connection. I have 10 gigabit going to the switch, and you can see all the other stuff that's connected to it. But yeah, that little computer I'm using is kind of overkill for our needs. But one thing that I like having a router for is it could handle a lot more than what the router or modem or whatever your internet company gives you, especially when you're talking about Wi-Fi. Right now I have 3 Wi-Fi access points spread out around the house. They're the Ubiquiti Networks access points, the little round ones, and they're not about the size of a big smoke detector really, but look like a UFO. But they can handle a lot more connections. But you're like, Neil, I only got like 3 cell phones in the house, and that's all I use. Yeah, I know. But you don't realize that cell phone has hundreds of connections it's making to the internet all the time that are always open. And then once you start doing video streaming, you have a computer and you're going to multiple websites, and you have your son streaming, and you have all these phones, and then you have your streaming sticks on your TV and everything. You're looking at thousands of connections going to a single access point, either on your internet's router or the one that you installed, but they can't handle it, and that's a big issue. So you really need to set up multiple access points throughout your house. That way you always have a good strong signal, and then you need to have a decent router that can handle those kinds of connections. Years ago, I had like a little Linksys router with Wi-Fi, and it worked okay. But then whenever I switched to the DDWRT firmware, it was able to handle a lot more than what the stock firmware can handle. And that's when I realized, oh, you start seeing all the connections. I wish it showed it on here. The reason why I switched up my router is that the Ubiquiti gateway router that I was using, it just couldn't handle the traffic anymore. I had gigabit service from Comcast, and it just couldn't handle it. But before, I had like 75 megabit service from AT&T, and I was happy with that all day long. But once you start trying to connect like gigabit or higher to it, it only had gigabit ports on it, so it couldn't go any higher than that. And it really couldn't handle the traffic. Yeah, so there's a couple points of why I'm switching up the routers. One is I have 2 gigabit internet at home. The router is doing okay, but we don't have enough phones and other devices connected to it directly to saturate that. Really only Wi-Fi's phone is connected directly to it. All my other stuff is connected through multiple gateways and routers. So I have the little Raspberry Pi that Ethernet side. I have it plugged into my router, so it's kind of multiple hops. And so I need to get rid of all those hops. I need to go directly to the AT&T router with a cable and turn off everything on that AT&T router. I want my router to have the external IP, because that is much safer than letting AT&T or anything directly on the AT&T network get into that little router, because I can buy that router on eBay, hack it, play around with it. This router allows me to do some things that can limit who comes onto my network. Like internet service providers router really doesn't do too well. Like I messed around with the one that Comcast had, and even though I limited it by MAC address, it would still allow other phones and other devices to connect to it. I don't know why. It would just like, oh, and then with the Xfinity, like through Comcast, it has this checkbox on it, like, hey, let the Xfinity Wi-Fi come from my network. It won't go against your bandwidth the bandwidth that you use, but it allows people to use your router, your own router, to get onto their Wi-Fi network. And it's like, that's crazy. Don't do that. Make sure that that's unchecked. And even still, if it's unchecked, it's still running. I don't know why, but when I turned off all of their stuff and had my router connected directly to their modem, the Xfinity Wi-Fi portion was completely dead. Like it didn't show up at all. So just watch how you connect all your devices on your network. Make sure that like no one's really getting in. On most routers, you can limit it by MAC address. So that's the address of your phone, your streaming devices, your computers. Everything that connects to your network has to have a MAC address. And yeah, so it's really important. Don't leave your network open. Pick a really long password. It doesn't have to be too hard to remember. I mean, it doesn't have to be just random numbers and letters. You can make it have words. Include a special character like exclamation point, question mark, $, something like that. And also include a couple capital letters and maybe a number or two. And if you pick a 16 character long password, it would take, I looked it up earlier, it was something like 23 billion years for somebody to crack it nowadays, to brute force crack it. So that's a really long time. So make sure you have a long password for everything you have nowadays, because I mean, like, I'm looking at like security stuff online, especially nowadays that everything is wireless. Everything wireless becomes a big security issue, because people could get on it for like your Wi-Fi network. This thing, I'm gonna turn it into a Pwnagotchi, which is a device that it looks for Wi-Fi networks, and then goes back, uses AI to crack the password, and they say it's pretty quick. And the longer the password, the longer it's gonna take to crack it. And, you know, everything's wireless nowadays, so just be careful with what you have, what you leak out, and how and what you connect to. All those open Wi-Fi networks at these places you go to. I mean, people can kind of see what you're doing. People can see, like, if you're connected to the network, or like to an open Wi-Fi network, they can see, at least whoever owns the network, they can see like what you're getting on to on the internet. They can probably decode some stuff. If you allow it to use Wi-Fi for phone service, that's not encrypted in any way. So if somebody captures that network traffic going through, and then uses like a decoder for the codec that was used on the cell phone, they can hear your conversation, both sides of it. So be very careful when you're using your the Wi-Fi for your cell phone calls. Yeah, so open Wi-Fi networks, just be careful. Using a VPN on your phone, you should probably do that. That way, from your phone to the endpoint of the VPN, it's all encrypted. So after that, then it gets decrypted and goes out to the internet. So that way you're kind of somewhat safe, but at least you're safer. Just, you need to trust your VPN company. So, and their internet service provider. So right now our AT&T modem is in our bedroom, sitting on top of a big cabinet in there, a curio cabinet. And so I need to run a cable from there, and I'm gonna run it into our hallway over here upstairs, where I'm gonna have my router. So that way, and I have a direct connection from our modem router from AT&T directly to my personal router, so that I'm not going through any Wi-Fi hops, because that kind of just slows everything down. At least on this computer, I want to get it to 1 gigabit, which I'll have to use the command instead of the website to do that. The upload should be 1 gigabit because it's a square connection. And yeah, so I'm can't wait to have that happen.